One, young men, old men, white men, black men. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have a problem with men. And as you'll be able to hear from the stadiums in Michigan and Alabama, men love Donald Trump. Two, Israel looks to be preparing an invasion of Lebanon. The decapitation of Hezbollah continues as flooding in southeastern America is of biblical proportions. To 100 dead. What can we do? What we once did together in Maui, what can we do in North Carolina? A conversation with the author of a new book, Nobody is Coming to Save You, a Green Beret's Guide to Getting Big Stuff Done, Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann. And three, we have it out on the Will Cain Show on how we can keep America from becoming Florida State. Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page, always on demand by subscribing on YouTube. Head over to the Will Cain Show on Facebook, and you can join us every Monday through Thursday at 12 o'clock Eastern Time. Just hit subscribe, jump into the comments section, become a member of the Willisha. If you're listening on terrestrial radio, just hit subscribe on Apple or Spotify and listen to the Will Cain Show on your own schedule. We're back. We're back together. All four of us here on the Will Cain Show, the boys in New York and Florida and Texas. We got Tinfoil Pat. We got Young Establishment James. And back from his honeymoon, we got two-a-days Dan.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Dan.
Thanks, man. I missed you guys. Yeah. It was a
Married.
while. Yeah, married guy now.
Well, how is it?
It was good. Married life's not that much different, I got to be honest with you, than dating life. You know, you're already living together, so it's kind of the same.
A full week and a half in and a couple of days off of a honeymoon?
Yep.
Do you ever watch Love is Blind?
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah.
You might. I'm not so sure about the accuracy of your assessment. It's not so different from dating life.
Yeah.
I mean, let's get beyond the honeymoon. Let's get beyond the margaritas at noon and see about married life.
That's a good point. There was a lot of frozen drinks down there, so you're right. You know, back to real world. I have a few takeaways if you want to hear them.
I want to hear your top 3 takeaways from a week of marriage and honeymoon.
Well, first one, with the wedding, the planning does pay off, but the planning is way more stressful than the actual day of the wedding. That was something I absolutely learned.
I think as any good planner would probably recognize. In fact, we've got a Green Beret, a former Green Beret, Special Forces coming to join us here today. I'm going to suspect that if you do all your stress in the planning, you don't have to stress in the execution. And then you can just enjoy your wedding.
Yeah, it was great. The second takeaway, it was great advice not to drink too much before the ceremony. That was such a plus.
I don't know who told you that, but
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you probably had what? Did you have a cocktail or did you have a beer sort of in the getting dressed phase with the boys? But yeah, you don't want to be sloshing up to the altar.
I've been to weddings that has happened quite often. So I didn't want to be
terrible.
that guy. I know, it's terrible. I didn't want to be that guy, and that was good. One takeaway from vacation, it's good to make vacation friends. Shout out Adam and Allie. And we met a lot of Texas people down there too, who are fans of Will Cain and the Fox News.
That's wonderful. You made vacation friends. I agree. Interesting. Vacation friends. Do you think you'll keep up with Adam and Allie?
I think so. They live in the UK, and they invited us to their place in where they live, right outside of London. So I'd love to go there. So who knows if that'll keep up? I would love to do that, but you know, vacation friends are great.
How did that happen? At the bar?
Yeah, we had a swim up bar. It's just like, hey, we're all drinking at 11 a.m. Let's do it together and make friends.
Vacation friends.
Mm-hmm.
Are those real friends? Will you hang on to vacation friends?
Right.
I have vacation friends. I've had vacation friends my whole life, but the key to that was every year in the same spot. I saw those same vacation friends. Growing up with them, now I know their kids. But unless you and Adam and Allie are all going to end up back in Mexico every year at the same time, I predict this friendship has a 1 year over under.
No.
We'll
make a bet.
And that 1 year is only predicated on you going to the UK before that year elapses.
That's true. If we would have to do it within the year. You're right. But I think we will. We're coming to see you.
You will. All right.
Are they watching?
That'd be great. Maybe they'll take you to an Aston Villa game.
Yes, they said
that's just Dan's new team.
I did say to Adam, he's like, you go to Birmingham once, you're not going to be an Aston Villa fan again.
Or you start watching Peaky Blinders. That's
There
how you can. That's how you can virtually travel to Birmingham, UK. We're glad to have you back. Justin did a good job. He taught us about DJing. We got to get 2 days to take his personality test. We all did that last week. I had my kids take it, by the way. Had my kids and my wife take the Briggs. This is what my quick takeaway on assigning people to the personality quiz. I don't know if it's kids or not, or maybe it's my control freak personality. I didn't like their results, so I said, let me do it for you. I'm gonna answer the questions for you. And I think that what I got back from my boys was more accurate than their self-assessment. So I actually don't know if that's a bigger reflection on me or them. But we got to get Dan's results on the Myers-Briggs 16 personalities test. We'll do that later this week here on the Will Cain Show. But men, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have trouble with men. Donald Trump seems to have no trouble courting the college football fans from Michigan to Alabama. Let's get into it with story number 1. Donald Trump attended Alabama, Georgia on Saturday night. Instant classic of a game. What looked like a blowout ended up with a Georgia lead with 2 minutes left to go in the game. But Alabama once again rallied and scored a game-winning touchdown in front of the former president of the United States. He was accompanied by Kid Rock, John Daly, Senators Katie Britt, Steve Daines, Tommy Tuberville. It was a very, very friendly environment for Donald Trump. Listen to the crowd of some 100,000 in Alabama for Donald Trump. They saw him on the Jumbotron. He was behind protective glass for what it's worth in a luxury box and went all the way to the ceiling, the protective glass. The crowd chanted, USA, USA. It's a similar reception he's gotten to other college football environments all across the country. You could probably rank college football up there with NASCAR and perhaps rodeo as the friendliest sports environments for Donald Trump. But this is a crowd, this is a sport that was reclaimed by Tim Walz. He said that famously. Kamala Harris's vice presidential candidate said, you know what else I'm doing? I'm taking football back. Well, that's not what it sounded like when Tim Walz attended Minnesota versus Michigan in Ann Arbor, Michigan. The crowd reportedly yelled, Tampon Tim. They were upset that his motorcade caused traffic to back up outside of the big house. Again, this is the man who proclaimed to reclaim football. That doesn't seem to be what is playing out in reality. Polling shows that young men are trending increasingly and more extremely conservative, more religious, and for 18 to 24-year-old Gen Z, even more so to the right than millennials, than men 24 to 29. It's an interesting move because it doesn't just encompass white men. And for that matter, it doesn't just even encompass young men. It's all across the demographic spectrum. It's black men. I want you to take a look at something that I came across just this morning. There's a podcast called the All the Smoke podcast. It's hosted by a couple of former colleagues of mine at ESPN, Stephen Jackson and Matt Barnes, both formerly of the Golden State Warriors and numerous other teams. But Vice President Kamala Harris, having not done many media appearances, decided that All the Smoke podcast was someplace she would have a sit down. Now, it's going to be friendly. These guys are on the left. And I haven't listened to the episode. I've only seen a couple of clips, and they talk about, in the clip, the Raiders, the A's, the Warriors all leaving Oakland. But what I found fascinating was I just dropped into the comment section here of All the Smoke podcast on Instagram, and I was fascinated by the comments. I mean, the comments read as follows. Who else is voting Trump? Wonder how much they sold out for. Anything on jailing black men for weed? You helped destroy this city, directed at Kamala Harris. Trump 2024. Trump 2024. Another one, no on Kamala. Y'all talking some BS. This clip got to be bait for people to watch the episode. Another one, anything on people she locked up or all just prisoners of the moment. Just a fascinating reception for Kamala Harris, at least in the comment section of the All the Smoke podcast. Now, I will grant you, what are comments on the internet? Are they representative of something greater? I'm doubtful. I'm always skeptical of the algorithm. Is it feeding me something? Maybe it, Will's on the right, so we're going to prioritize Trump comments for, I don't know. But there's a reason Kamala Harris went on this podcast. I mean, you'd have to assume, first of all, obviously the audience over-indexes male. It's a sports and culture, black culture podcast. It indexes, I would assume, based upon Kamala Harris's choice and the topics that these guys talk about. I mean, I like the topics, but a lot of black men. And so what you're seeing in the comments here is an audience that is historically friendly to Democrats, at least commenting some real antagonism to Kamala Harris, reflecting this party is in trouble when it comes to men. Now, some of that Donald Trump talked about at the game on Saturday night. He talked to Clay Travis about new numbers that are out by Fox News. This was just released by ICE. Kamala Harris took a trip to the border on Friday. And $60,000 necklace, visited a 2011 section of the border wall built by Obama, was there for 20-something minutes. But at the same time, then ICE released the following numbers. Non-detained, non-citizen convicted criminals. So 13,000 illegal immigrants who have been convicted of homicide, that's in their home country, in the United States. Almost 16,000 convicted of sexual assault, rape, in their home countries now in the United States. In total, 425,000 illegal criminals in the United States. That's obviously beyond the crime of illegal immigration. That's other crimes they have committed. Now, DHS, which is a political body run by Alejandro Mayorkas, has come out and said those numbers are not exclusive to the last 3.5 years. They're an accumulation over a long period of time. Maybe. How do we know? ICE didn't break it out. DHS hasn't broken it out. But we've seen the numbers on illegal crossings over the last 3.5 years. And as a general proposition, they've quadrupled. They have quadrupled. 2 million encounters during the Trump administration, 8 million during Biden-Harris. So am I to assume this is some great exception, that the number of criminals in this country, 13,000 murderers? And by the way, this doesn't include the countries that don't tell us if they're criminals. These are only the countries that tell us. And this also doesn't include the unknown gotaways. Like, these are the ones we can quantify, we've encountered. Who knows how many didn't even interact, haven't interacted at all with Border Patrol. So Trump pointed this out as one of the biggest issues in the election, and we can wonder aloud why it is they're having so much trouble with men, but this would be one of the substantive issues. The others would be masculinity. I mean, generally there's been antagonism towards the concept of masculinity. We've been introduced to the idea of toxic masculinity. We've seen football itself kind of dismissed as, like a vice, like smoking football. It's bad for all of us as a society. And then you got Donald Trump. And you got Donald Trump making the argument to Clay Travis of Outkick during halftime that we need to make America great again, but we also need to make kickoffs great again. Listen to this.
I don't know what they're doing with the kickoff return in the NFL. I don't want to get involved in controversy, but it looks so bad. And I noticed they haven't done that in college, and they shouldn't do it. And I think the NFL should go back. I mean, maybe it's a little more dangerous. I doubt it's any more dangerous.
Sorry. I don't know if you had trouble with that audio. I didn't. It didn't come across well to me there.
That's the one Clay posted, yeah. I don't know if they had their mic on for that one, that part.
He said, I don't know what's going on with the kickoffs in the NFL. They're bad. And it is so confusing watching NFL kickoffs. Like, I mean, I get it. You can't move until the kickoff is received. And what's the strategy? That the kicker should put it on like the 1? Because if it goes in the end zone, it comes out to the 30 now or 35. I don't even know what we're doing in kickoffs. And Donald Trump doesn't either. Again, like illustrating a little bit of an everyman take that is connecting with men. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. This is trouble. This is trouble from all the smoke to the stats to college football. This is trouble. You have to have at least some traction with men. Speaking of men, purpose. How do we not just rail on the internet? How do we not just perform? How do we actually be people of consequence who make our world a better place? Well, the world is providing us with the opportunity with flooding, catastrophic biblical flooding in North Carolina, in South Carolina, in eastern Tennessee, and the doorstep of another war, possibly a conflict that spirals into regional war in the Middle East, which of course involve the United States. How do you find your place? How do you find your purpose? Not just as a man, but as a person. We're going to discuss that with the author of a new book, Nobody is Coming to Save You, a Green Beret's Guide to Getting Big Stuff Done. Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann, next on The Will Cain Show.
It's time to take the quiz.
5 questions, 5 minutes a day, 5 days a week.
History, pop culture, science, sports, civics. How much do you know? Let's find out.
Who was the first person to walk on the moon?
Jackson or something?
Neil Armstrong.
Take the quiz every weekday at thequiz.fox and then listen to the quiz podcast to find out how you did.
Play, share, and of course, listen to the quiz right now at thequiz.fox.
Tuesday, it's Vance versus Walz.
Together, we will put the citizens of America first.
This election's about which direction this country's going to go in.
The CBS News Vice Presidential Debate on Fox News. Watch special Democracy 24 pre- and post coverage. Plus, Sean Hannity from the Spin Room. More Democrats, more independents, and more Republicans turn to Fox News than any other news network. The CBS News Vice Presidential Debate simulcast, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern on Fox News. America is watching. Are you?
From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
I'm Janice Dean, Fox News senior meteorologist, and my podcast, the Janice Dean Podcast. Every week, I'll be focusing in on a person, a place, or a thing that deserves your attention because it makes the world a better place. Be sure to subscribe to the Janice Dean Podcast at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And don't forget to spread the sunshine.
America's listening to Fox News.
Flooding in the United States, war in the Middle East, and a life of purpose for you because nobody is coming to save you. That's coming up on the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, and the Fox News Facebook page. Just hit subscribe at Apple, Spotify, or on YouTube. Joining me now is the author of that new book, Nobody is Coming to Save You, a Green Beret's Guide to Getting Big Stuff Done, Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann. What's up, Scott?
Hey, Will, you can't say it? You can't say what it is? You can't say what the big stuff
I can say it. It's the internet. A Green Beret's Guide to Getting Big Shit Done. I can say it. I don't, it's like, I don't want to be gratuitous.
No, I know.
I don't want to be a prude.
Yeah,
so
I went back and forth on it,
yeah.
man. I went back and forth on it, but you know what? I had so many NCOs and special forces over the year that would say it that way. You know, whenever we would go into places, we knew that it just stuff didn't really encapsulate the strategic nature of what had to get done in these rough places, you know? And so I thought, well, let's just make it the title too.
Shit done. All right, I want to start here. A little bit of background. So I have known Scott. Scott's been a friend of this show and Fox and Friends. He's been on a lot. And I think for anybody who's a dedicated viewer or listener to the Will Cain Show has come across Scott before, not just because you've been a guest, Scott, but a little over a year ago now, and I'm wearing this shirt. There's no coincidence today. I'm wearing a Lahaina Strong shirt.
Yeah.
A little bit over a year ago. First, I got to know Scott, I would say, largely through Pineapple Express. Okay, you came on Fox and Friends, you would talk about Pineapple Express, the operation that you and many vets put together, a lot of Green Berets, but others as well, to get Americans out of Afghanistan in the face of the failure of the American government with that withdrawal. And then when Lahaina burned, you and I connected, and I don't know, it was just moved to purpose. And we got to do something. We got to do something. And you took is part of your character, you took a leadership position. You put a group together. I contributed to that group. And we managed to pull off some pretty incredible feats in getting a 747 full of over $1 million of goods and other stuff delivered to Maui. So you and I not only have become friends through that process, but I think in a lot of ways we have, me to a smaller degree, obviously, you with your life now, experienced. Nobody's coming to save you. A Green Beret's guide to getting shit done. And I want to take that backstory, Scott, and I actually want to apply it to what's happening right now in America with the floods. I mean, it's horrible what's going on in North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee. It's really bad, and I know it touches you personally.
It does, and I appreciate you having me on, Will. And you're absolutely right, man. I mean, the way that we connected through, crisis has really stuck with me. And that's most of my relationships these days are people that I've met in the struggle, in the crisis. And what we did with Pineapple was absolutely what we put in place to do in Lahaina. And I have to say, there were a range of people that jumped into the fray. That's what made it so cool and never ceases to amaze me, Will, is the number of Americans, but the diversity of Americans from where they come from. And, the one thing about West Maui and the abandonment of our allies, nobody was talking about politics. Everybody was myopically focused on the purpose at hand because nobody was coming. And, I think what's happening right now with Hurricane Helene, whether that's in Florida or whether that's in Asheville, North Carolina, where all my folks are from, it is catastrophic, man. I tell you, I think what's going on in the Asheville area right now in Western North Carolina is apocalyptic. I think what's going to come out of there, I don't know that we're even ready for what's about to come out of there in terms of the scale and scope of the devastation. And it's because there's no commo in there, but it's not good, man. And we're going to need some kind of network-centric approach there, I believe, as well, and probably in other events as they follow.
Yeah, the latest I saw, Scott, is 100 dead, perhaps. And I learned in Maui, obviously, you think that's usually a conservative figure that gets worse. You got to be careful because sometimes also when there's guesswork, people fill in the gap. So who knows? Who knows? But I've seen the images.
Yeah.
I mean, I-40's down.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big thoroughfare. And that these towns in Western North Carolina are islands now. I mean, they're totally disconnected in so many ways. Not just physically, but as you pointed out, like no service, no power, no nothing.
No, and I was talking to one of my buddies who's a former case officer with the agency. His name's Matt, and his mother was stranded in there, and he hadn't heard from her. He hadn't heard anything from her. So, and they said, well, all the roads are down. You can't get in. So Matt, being Matt, he got an old school map, got his ham radio, got in his Jeep, and external gas tanks, and he picked his way through the Appalachian Mountains, and he got his mom, and he got her out of there. But what he saw on the way, and what he's talked to me about, Will, and what I'm hearing from others is absolute devastation. But I think the good news in all of that, if there is any, is the way that people are leveraging relationships and human connection to get through it. And I think that's what happened with Lahaina. I think it's what happened with Pineapple. And frankly, I think it's the last best shot we got in this country, man. I think it's the last best shot we have at reclaiming our country, reclaiming our collective agency, and who we are as Americans. It is this kind of bottom-up grassroots leadership. Because if we're waiting for institutional leaders to handle it, we're deluded.
Yeah, you've talked a lot about that. So yesterday I was kind of scrolling through my feed too much, as we all do, and I saw these helicopters, and I tweeted this out, but I saw these helicopters taking off, over there somewhere. I guess it's in Carolina, could have been South Carolina, Tennessee, I don't know. And it was just sort of like a civilian Air Force, taking off, trying to get supplies in, back and forth. I'll never forget, once I got over to Maui, the things that neighbors did for one another.
Right.
Like you had a Navy basically shipping supplies from one island to another. I met two Mormon girls, and people always get on me, and they're right to do that. I mean, they're in their 20s, but they were young women who just started this logistical airlift of bringing stuff from one side of the island to the other into this little airport. And the biggest takeaway, you can focus, and it deserves attention, like institutions will fail you. But in the end, your biggest social safety net is your neighbor. It's your fellow American. And I know you believe that. And I want to let you talk on that. You and I texted yesterday, and I was like, I want to be a resource. What can I do? And we haven't followed up with each other yet. But, like, I think for a lot of people listening, like, okay, unless it is my neighbor, unless it is my town, what can I do?
That's a great question, and I know we will follow up on it because I think there is actually work. And look, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we don't need institutions. In a first world country of abundance, you need institutions. They can do things that only institutions can do. What I'm saying is that a lot of these institutions are failing us, right? Whether that was in how we treated our allies and how we left Afghanistan, whether that is in disaster response. There's a lot of heroes out there in the institutions doing the work, but at a leadership level, slow to the punch, hand-wringing kind of things where networks can fill the gap. And where I'm going with that, Will, and I talk a lot about this in the book, is that throughout our history, actually, and especially in the early 1900s, the country was in a very close place to where it is right now. It was like a downswing of trust, political division, haves and have-nots, and most pundits were saying that America was on her last leg, and this was in the early 1900s. And then a couple of drunks in Akron, Ohio, Dr. Bob and Bill W. couldn't get sober, and they had a meeting, and they called it Alcoholics Anonymous. Around the same time in Chicago, the Rotary Club was formed, the Junior League, the NAACP, the Elks Club. All of the clubs and social organizations that you and I grew up with as kids were actually formed in about a 10-year period in the darkest period of American history. That was before we had the kind of technology that you and I used on Signal to work with others across the country, and if not the world, on helping Lahaina. And so where I'm going with this is we've been here before. There's actually a macro precedent for America reclaiming its agency through bottom-up grassroots movements using old school interpersonal skills and relationships that were built when risk was low and cashed in when the stakes are high. And I think that's what we've got to get back to. We've got to get conscious of it, intentional about it. And I think if we do that, it starts to create a movement across the country that, if nothing else, will shame our institutional leaders into doing the right thing or put the pressure on them to step up.
So you said two things there. Before I get more into the book, you talked about agency. That's the thing. Like, I think for so many people listening and watching, so we talk often about the lack of purpose in young men and then therefore the rise of depression and things like this. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a direct product of letting the world scroll by. And our main contribution being to that, something we pound out with our thumbs as a performance, largely.
Yes.
And there's so much purpose and fulfillment in agency, meaning I took action. I did something, right? Yes. Not just tweet something. I am more proud of what we did a year ago in Maui than probably anything I've ever said on television, obviously, right? Or any big stand I've taken, no matter how brave or how against the grain on ESPN, because it was agency. And there's different personality types, Scott. And, I know that for me, I am happier when in control, even with failure. Like, failure is not what bothers me.
Right.
A lack of control is what bothers me.
Right.
And I just think that for everybody listening and watching, part of what you're telling us is also the path to fulfillment, like a real life of purpose.
100%, man, because, one of the things in the book that I hit really hard is what I call the human operating system. And this is something that I've taught for years to young Green Berets and federal law enforcement agents that have to go into really tough arenas, is that we have to understand this instrument that is the human operating system. And it's a very primal instrument. It's been around for hundreds of thousands of years, and it really hasn't changed. We're well-dressed Neanderthals in how we navigate the world, even though technology is swirling all around us. And you know what's at the heart of that? Is meaning. We are meaning-seeking, meaning-assigning creatures. The brain actually has a mandate, according to Dr. Ivan Tyrrell, to make sense of the world. It has a mandate to make sense, to add meaning to what's going on. So we ignore that at our peril. And I think when you see, like you just said, when you see the levels of disengagement that are happening in the corporate workspace, in our communities, it's an absence of purpose. And that's a leadership problem, right? That's a leadership problem, that absence, but it's also an agency problem. People are not applying agency in their own life. And you're absolutely right. That's why Lahaina, I think pineapple, and these other things resonate so deeply with Americans because they see Americans just stepping up and trying to do something. Look, I mean, we left tens of thousands of commandos behind. Like, I get texts from them, I get videos from them that they've lost their father. They was executed. And you just think, my God, like, we've failed. But you know what? At least we tried. At least we did something meaningful. And I think today people are they're just starving for that. You know, they're starving for leaders who will just step into the arena and give it a shot, man. Because most institutional leaders are too busy with self-preservation. So that element of meaning in this digital world, like, it is strategic in what it's rocket fuel for what we do.
A lot of the stuff you're telling us, just for the record, is Scott is referencing our human operating system and the way we live in a distracted world. A lot of this is laid out in Nobody Is Coming to Save You. It really is. He talks about how much of us is above the waterline versus below the waterline, meaning we're glaciers. You know, you ever see a glacier? Whatever you see is like 20% of what you see. The rest is under the water, and that's all what makes us up. And but before. So there was one other thing that you had talked about on this front of agency, because I almost imagine myself talking to someone right now. I'm talking to you, Scott, but I'm also talking to people listening. And I know there's a lot of women that listen to this show, and I love them and appreciate that because I actually interact with a lot of them for some reason. But I also know there's a lot of dudes and a lot of dudes whose operating systems, how about this way, are set very similar to mine. And I almost feel like this part, it's not just for the men, it's for everybody, but I can almost hear them responding to me how, like, or that's, like, take what's happening in North Carolina. I mean, like, that's, for many listening, that's far away. And, like, even for me, Scott, I'm struggling with the how right now.
Yeah.
But this ties into your Green Beret experience now and what you said. What I learned, again, through my limited experience and your extensive experience is we can't answer that question right now, and you don't have to. It's about jumping into the chaos. And this is the Green Beret side of you. This is what you did in Afghanistan. This is the story of you dropping into a village. Like, there's a lot of planning and some attempts to answer that, but it truly starts to come together in the action, right? Like, you can't map it all out and game plan it. It's not until, in some cases, in your case, the bullets are flying, but in others, you're just getting done that you figure out the how.
100%. And, you know, I think back, like, when I was a young Green Beret and those Green Beret. So, you know, our charter is to go into rough, trust-depleted places and build connections with locals and then help them stand up on their own. So to go in with 12 and come out, you know, with 1,200. You know, I tell people a Green Beret these days is a combination of John Wick, Lawrence of Arabia, and the Verizon guy. You know, this eclectic combination of those three avatars. And I think about, like, one of my former sergeant majors, this guy, Bill Sarnowski. I think he's probably listening. He loves your show. And, you know, there was occasions where I would be worried about what was coming our way, what the threats were, what the attacks were going to be. And he'd say, hey, sir, ain't nobody coming. It's us. Whatever we've got, that's what we're just going to have to figure it out as we go. And I think about when we contacted around Lahaina, one of the first things you said to me was, Scott, I'm not really sure that I'm even relevant to this. You know, I'll jump in and I'll give it a try, but I'm not even sure how I can play a position here. And I think what I said to you was something to the effect of, you'll know when it's time for you to step in. You know, just get in the network and start mixing it up. And we did an introduction. We got into the signal room, and there were all these eclectic people in there. And then at some point, man, it flicked for you, and you knew exactly what you needed to do. And what you noticed, I think, was that a lot of the other people simply stepped back because you were most relevant to the problem at that moment. And that's the key of leadership that I see today, that you see happening in Asheville, you see happening in other places, is these leaders in the arena that they step in. Once you get in there and you build connections and relationship and trust, and you start sticking and moving with myopic focus on the problem, you hit a state of flow. And you know when to step in, you know when to step back, and that becomes the real power of that collective effort. And it's something that I think we're right on the edge of it right now. I really believe it. I think we're right on the edge of it in this country. And I'm encouraged by it. That's why I put the book out. Is you don't deploy your reserves when you're losing the fight. You deploy your reserves when you're about to win the fight. And I think that's exactly where we are. And it's why I decided to put the book out right now, because I think it is a supplement to helping do that, to make those connections and do what scares the hell out of you, because that's what's needed.
Well, you just did this again. You just referenced something that is a deep. Every one of these things you're saying, by the way, are a deeper well. They're a deeper well for me of curiosity of your life experience, and they're a deeper well of explanation in Nobody's Coming to Save You. But like the relationship side, right? You know, Scott, that's actually been a difficult thing in my life. Not that I have trouble making relationships. That I guess. You know, there was a formation of me in my life where it's like, I don't want to rely on the concept of networking. That somehow networking felt like cheating to me, you know? And it's like, I want to do it on my own. And life has taught me that is so wrong. Now, I appreciate the Sigma. You know, there's the Alpha, and all the kids today love the Sigma, the lone wolf version of the Alpha, right? My kids reference it. But the truth is, you don't get things done on a grand scale alone. You just don't. And so relationships... You know, once the signal room for Lahaina, whatever, like you said, that was, I think it ended up, it's probably 50 to 100 people contributing at some level, you know, probably a core 20 who are really thoroughly getting in there. And I didn't know, well, one of them, but for you dropping in. And those relationships are what make everything happen. And you said something really smart in the book. You're like, you just have to collect these relationships.
Right.
And it's not about like, this ugly, like thinking of relationships as transactional. We're talking about the path to meaning here. And therefore, the path to action and meaning is through relationships.
Yes, and that's really well stated. And what I want to try to get across to people is this is not kumbaya stuff. Like, I'm not coming at this from some kind of theoretical point of view of wouldn't it be nice. I mean, these were the things I learned in the most dangerous places on earth, where the casualty count was enormous, right? And you were going into these places where the elder across from you is tickling the trigger of his AK-47, trying to figure out whether he's going to dispatch you or not. And you've got a couple of minutes to make some kind of move. Now, you can either reach for your weapon, or you can threaten that guy, or you can make a human connection. And what I found hanging out with some of the most iconic Green Berets on the planet was that they would make a connection almost every time, and that they would move with immense skill to make this connection. And the reason was because within a couple of months, that same elder would be up on his rooftop slinging lead right there beside him. Not because he had to do it, but because he chose to do it. And at the end of the day, the primal reality of humans, particularly in a crisis and when we're scared and when we're afraid, forget all that crap you see in the movies, it is the man and woman to your shoulder, to your left, and to your right that will determine whether you live or die in the moment. It has nothing to do with you, almost nothing. It has to do with the relationships that you built when trust was low and that you've leveraged when the stakes are high. And that's just the way it is. And whether it's a wildfire or whether it's a terrorist attack or a mudslide or an economic or a COVID, I mean, the reality is we are social creatures. We don't have fur, fangs, or claws, but we sit on top of the food chain because we form teams better than any other mammal. And the humans that get that and make social capital, their relationship portfolio, their weight of effort, they're the ones that are going to be more relevant, especially in hard times. That's been my experience.
What do you think that is? That's so fascinating what you referenced about the Elks and the Rotary and all that. What, like, and this is such a big question, Scott, and something you know I've talked about, and I think it might even be your life's purpose going forward. But like, how do you envision that? Is that, I mean, is there no need to reinvent the wheel? Is it like local communities more invested in things like Elks or whatever? Like, I don't know anybody that belongs to that anymore, right? But like, it's true, you have to start local. Again, something you write about in the book. But how do you envision that? Like, what's an actionable plan?
Well, I think the first thing is we need to reacquaint ourselves with the civil society we already have. Like, that's, you know, when Alexander de Tocqueville visited the United States, you know, over 100 years ago, he went back to Europe and he said, the amazing thing about America is they have a sense of individualism that's rightly understood. Right? We already have a civil society that allows us to get beyond our primal tendencies of clan and tribe and group, which, by the way, are great if you're in the right clan or tribe, but not so great if you're not. You know, it's not, you look at some of these countries like Afghanistan where literally engulfed in tribal warfare. You know, we live in a society where we trust each other in a bridging kind of way. We actually bridge beyond our in-groups and our out-groups. There is a level of social capital that is our secret sauce. It's what has allowed us to be who we are in the world and navigate the world that we do and have, frankly, the levels of abundance that we have. Typically, humans don't live in abundance. We live in scarcity. And if you don't believe me, go to some of these places where people are siphoning gas out of each other's gas tanks right now. I mean, that's what we resort to very quickly. But yet there is in this society this level of abundance and the ability to chase one's dreams. And it's because we have a level of social capital that typically leaders are the stewards of. I think it was Jonathan Haidt that says, high-performing societies have psychological safety, they have trust in their neighbors, and they have institutions they can believe in. And we're failing dismally in all those. So my vision is that, first of all, we have a constitution that works really well. It empowers the individual, and I think we need to get back to that and aspire to be what's in it. But also, as communities and as humans, we need to look around at all the systemic problems that we have and stop this language of, somebody ought to do something about that. Well, step in the arena and do it and build a community of practice, which is what I talk about in my book. It's what we did with the play Last Out. Never written a play in my life, never acted in my life, and stepped off on a midlife crisis to learn how to act at age 50. And we got a play together that was produced by Gary Sinise, right? And so we've done it. I've seen it done over and over again. You've done it, Will. We'll probably do something like that with Western North Carolina. I think, look at that piece of stinking cheese that's over in the corner that nobody's picking up and step in there and deal with it and build a network around it and just use your innate God-given skills to lead. And I think this book has a lot of the best practices to help you do that and to train on it. Train on your storytelling, train on your active listening, train on getting clear on your purpose and your meaning before the crisis occurs, and then leverage it when it happens.
Okay, I want to ask you about two things. One applies to your life experience, but the other applies to what you're exactly talking about. And you were just talking about tribes. So J.D. Vance, obviously the vice presidential candidate along with Donald Trump, was asked about illegal immigration, Scott. And he was asked, I think the question specifically is, what should a Christian approach be to illegal immigration? And he brought up a deeper topic that I personally find fascinating that touches on our conversation. I want you to listen to this from J.D. Vance.
Okay.
My first responsibility is to America's citizens. And I think there is this Christian idea that you owe the strongest duty to your family, and then you owe the next duty to your community, and then to your country, and then to everybody else. So it doesn't mean that you have to be mean to other people, but it means that your first duty as an American leader is to the people of your own country.
So I found that fascinating, Scott. Now, you were talking about tribalism. And you've got to return there in New York. This is back in the studios here in Dallas. I always have found this fascinating. This is the concentric circles of I guess, focus for empathy and priority. And what I have on my screen here for those listening instead of watching is this. The screen here on my left is conservative, and closer to the bullseye is closer to home. It's all of your family, then your extended family, then your closest friends, then all of your friends, then your acquaintances, and on and on and on and on until you get to your community, and then those very far away. And so for those on the right, it shows that their heat map is very much centered on 1, 2, 3, 4. Those closest to them are their priority. Those on the left, the center of their bullseye, the hottest of their concern level, is up around 13, 14, 15, which on the legend here, it says, all animals in the universe, including alien life forms, all living things in the universe, including plants and trees, and so on. More focus and empathy on that than their family. And what I have made the argument, Scott, is this is inverted. Like this, now you talked about tribes, and I think that does play a role, but like if we're talking about how we lead and where we give our focus, I think forget politics for a minute. Which one is labeled, which one is considered liberal, conservative. It should look like this. It should be that closest to you is most important to you.
Individualism, rightly understood, right? And I think that in this case, what we're talking about contextually is that we have to pay attention because not all tribalism is bad. You know, that's the other thing that I've always, I taught at Fort Bragg and other places is you have this notion that tribalism is bad. That's not true. I mean, Appalachia has high degrees of tribalism, rural areas. We all come from tribes and clans and in groups. That's how we survive. All mammals do that, and certainly humans do that. But what we have to understand is that in a society of abundance, right, where you have enough, most places in the world operate on scarcity. And so the only way you can survive is you're in group. The only way you can survive is your in-group. And that's it. You acquire and you preserve resources with your tribe, your family, your clan, whatever. In a society of abundance, it goes beyond your in-group. Your trust goes beyond your in-group, but you must always preserve the core level of your social capital. If you abandon that, then you abandon your entire foundation to establish trust at the outer edges, right? It cannot sustain itself. You are in complete violation of our biology, of how we're actually wired to navigate the world. It makes no sense in terms of even just pure survival. It doesn't work, right? You have to preserve the core elements of your social capital at the innermost level. And then from there, you bridge outward. That's the key.
Right. You write about this. You start local. And again, and nobody's coming to save you. You have to address things at the local level and then build from there. Last thing, because it's in the news, Scott, former Green Beret helped develop the village stability philosophy operations of dealing with tribes in Afghanistan. We're sitting here today. It looks like in an incredible military operation, Israel has taken out the tops of Hezbollah. People are talking. By the way, as a Green Beret, I'm actually just fascinated by your perspective on that. Blowing up the pagers, 15 years it took, but that was the opening salvo, Scott. Now we've seen the top leaders taken out by a missile strike, and now we have special forces or operations into Lebanon and tanks lined up at the border. What do you think? What are we on the verge of here in the Middle East?
Well, let's just unpack it. We are on the verge, I think, of what could be a major ground campaign in Lebanon. Now, what does that mean? Let's just pull apart what that means at face value. And we'll talk Israel and Hezbollah in just a second, and Iran. But in terms of what we should be paying attention to on this is, number one, this is probably going to cause a massive humanitarian issue in Lebanon. We are looking at, I've got buddies, we're all the volunteer groups, not just Pineapple, others are looking at this going, okay, is this going to be another network-centric effort where veterans fill the gaps here? And I think it will. I know Project Dynamo is already putting out, hey, if you need rescue, sign up here. And that always tells me, and they've already been on the ground, there's other operators on the ground I've been talking to that are in Lebanon now, and they're saying is maybe 30 to 50,000 American citizens caught up in this in Lebanon that would have to be evacuated because there's really nowhere to go. So we're looking at a major non-combatant evacuation, I think. We're looking at humanitarian displacement. That's one thing. Then when you look at the operation itself, I am really impressed always with how Israel conducts operations and how they've conducted themselves post-October 7. Look, starting with the pagers and then the radios. You talk about tactical and strategic patience and surgical targeting, and then to follow it with the hit with the bunker buster on Nasrallah, and now that you've taken out the entire command and control structure at the top, you have a limited window of time where they are in complete disarray. They'll fill the leadership gap. They always do. All these groups do. But right now, they are in turmoil, and so Israel has immediately pressed the gas. They have pressed the fight, and while they are while the head of the snake and the snake is writhing around, they're hitting the tunnels. And they're not missing a beat. So everything that I've seen them do, from their psychological warfare to their messaging to their surgical targeting, has been some of the most impressive stuff I've ever seen. And the last thing I'll say on it is I hope we're paying attention. Because if we think that Iran, Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, ISIS are not going to pursue some level of reciprocity at a much higher level, and maybe we can talk about this some other time, on the home front here, I think we're missing something really dangerous.
I've quoted you. You were on Fox Friends and said the people you've talked to have said that it's not just the warning board is not just lighting up, it's smoking in terms of, our southern border, what their plans are, what they want to do here, and what they increasingly might have the capacity to do here. But instead of that, I want to ask you, what will Iran do in response? Because that means that's going to dictate the extent to which there is a wider war in the Middle East, which could suck in the United States then.
I hate to say it depends, Will, but it kind of does. Iran has spent a lot of time cultivating Hezbollah as a surrogate force, and they are right now in danger of losing them. And Iran just doesn't have the capacity to fight a unilateral fight. I mean, they have a little bit. They have their own problems in their borders. They rely on these surrogates. They rely on Hamas. They rely on Hezbollah. And so, will they commit Hezbollah to an open war of a movement, conventional defense against the IDF? I don't know. I tend to think they won't. I think they'll cut their losses and pull back. But maybe they'll say, okay, this is our time. We're going to go for it. But I honestly think what you'll probably see Iran do is pull back because they've just been decimated. I don't see any move they can make here.
All right. So listen, sometimes when I do this show, I don't know. The guys in New York, and I'm about to have a big college football debate with these guys because they're incredibly wrong. But they know, I guess I get a little fatigued on, okay, I don't want to do the same stuff every day. I don't want to just complain. And this conversation is obviously an exception, but what's more important beyond the conversation is that, Scott, you have been a conduit for me of not just talking, but doing. And I want that to be increasingly a part of my life. I don't want to just talk into microphones.
Yeah.
I don't find it the same level of fulfillment. And I think if you're listening, I think you might find the same thing, And I do think, and he intends it to be a guidebook, and I think it can be a guidebook or a springboard or inspiration for you if you want to do something, right? If you want to get big shit done, because here's a Green Berets guide. Nobody is coming to save you. It's great, Scott, and I appreciate the book, and I appreciate our relationship. Appreciate you.
Thank you,
Lieutenant
brother.
Colonel
I
Scott
appreciate
Mann.
it, man, and I look forward to what we do together, and I hope everybody gets out there and gets after it.
Me too. Can't wait. All right, let's talk. Thanks, Scott. All right, coming up, I said big debate coming up here. Hey, how about this? I don't want America to be Florida State, okay? That was a big pre-show debate here on the Will Cain Show. Let's get into that next.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
I'm Janice Dean, Fox News senior meteorologist, and my podcast, the Janice Dean Podcast. Every week, I'll be focusing in on a person, a place, or a thing that deserves your attention because it makes the world a better place. Be sure to subscribe to the Janice Dean Podcast at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And don't forget to spread the sunshine.
America's listening to Fox News.
Tuesday, it's Vance versus Walz.
Together, we will put the citizens of America first. This election's about which direction this country's going to go in.
The CBS News Vice Presidential Debate on Fox News. Watch special Democracy 24 pre- and post coverage. Plus, Sean Hannity from the Spin Room. More Democrats, more independents, and more Republicans turn to Fox News than any other news network. The CBS News Vice Presidential Debate simulcast starting at 9 p.m. Eastern on Fox News. America is watching. Are you?
It's time to take the quiz.
5 questions, 5 minutes a day, 5 days a week.
History, pop culture, science, sports, civics. How much do you know? Let's find out.
Who was the first person to walk on the moon?
Jackson or something?
Neil Armstrong.
Take the quiz every weekday at thequiz.fox and then listen to the quiz podcast to find out how you did.
Play, share, and of course, listen to the quiz right now at thequiz.fox.
You can complain about the system, you can be demoralized, and you can end up 1-4. You can end up Florida State. Or you pick yourself back up and you move on, and you win, America. It's the Will Cain Show. Streaming live at foxnews.com on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Hit subscribe, Apple or Spotify. I've always had sympathy for Florida State fans. You can all speak to that. James, tinfoil, in 2 days. I feel bad for Florida State fans a year ago. I think I made the argument that Florida State should be in the national college football, the college football playoffs last year. But this morning, when talking about college football, as we did on our pre-show call, look at tinfoil Pat. He's already rocking. He's like rocking. Can you see that?
You got a rocking chair? Like what is that?
You know his legs just bouncing up and down.
Never
His
seen him
legs
rock
just-
before.
It's like a subtle little, it's a regular office chair. Just got a little bit of give to it. So
No, that more looks like somebody who's about to, who's on the verge of already being upset, and he's rocking. It's a soothing rock. That's what how people self-soothe? I think you're self-soothing a little bit.
I'm okay. I'm not crying or anything, so I'm okay.
So you said in passing and talking about college football from this past weekend that the ACC jobbed Virginia Tech, that the ACC saved Miami. Their Hail Mary pass at the end of the game did not award Virginia Tech a touchdown, right? And Miami got the win. Saved a perfect record for Miami. And the reason in part that's being brought up is, here we are today. I just submitted my college football top 12 playoffs, as did a lot of other people in the Outkick universe. You can go to outkick.com. I've got mine, by the way, up in the studios here of the Will Cain Show. I'm over here in the corner. And I've got Texas 1, Ohio State, no, Texas 2, 1, Alabama 2. No, you have to do it in order, right? So Alabama has to go 4 because they're second in the SEC. Yeah, okay, I'll get there 2 days. Texas 1, Ohio State 2, Miami 3, BYU 4, Alabama 5. That doesn't mean I think Alabama's the 5th best team in the country, but this is what would happen in the playoffs, right? Because Big 10, ACC, Big 12 get their buys, their top 4. And then Tennessee, Oregon. I got Georgia down to 9th. Okay, so that led to the larger debate of did the ACC save Miami? Now, his name is Tinfoil Pat. So he's going to tend to gravitate towards I changed my background on accident.
I was like, man.
The Will Cain podcast is back.
Check it out. Yeah.
Hey, there we go.
And the show.
He's going to tend towards conspiracy. It's just what he does, okay? He's the kind of guy that squints his eyes and sees what's really happening. And so the ACC is out there to save Miami. And then that led him into a diatribe about Florida State, right? And you said that the NCAA and ACC have so jobbed Florida State last year that they're demoralized and there's just no point in trying anymore. And that's why you've just now lost to SMU to go 1-4.
I'm trying to figure out why our team would go 1-4. And I'm trying to identify what exactly that problem was. And, going back to it, I mean, it's probably the screw job, That's and what I'm saying is the ACC didn't have our back the entire time. Like, it literally had its bell cow team out of the playoff and didn't go and defend them. It was absurd.
It's not the being good at football
and so
part.
Your point is the system is so rigged against Florida State that not that they're getting jobbed this year, but that it has successfully demoralized all of those kids to the point they are basically on the doorstep of why even try.
Yeah, I think the problem is Mike Norvell's messaging. So Mike Norvell is such a positive, upbeat person. He's a guy who sees the world like Scott Mann. And it's like, how are you supposed to get that message across to these kids who you told, follow the process, do everything you can do, and if you just went out and just do what you can do that within your power, you'll be rewarded. And then it turns out not to be the case. I mean, they overcame a massive injury at quarterback.
Okay, I want to tell you two things, okay? First of all, I lived my life like what you're saying for a long time. I did. Meaning I thought best man will win the job. Like, you do your best, you kick ass, you beat the other guy. And then what you said, what did you say? What was the word you said? It'll all work out, or you'll get your, whatever. Yeah. But that's where you made your mistake. From step 1 to step 2. So I'm going to give you a personal story. This is the kind of thing I'm going to do here. Like this, I don't care about this on social media, stuff like that, right? So, and y'all can laugh at me. In 2014, I think it was. So I was on The View, right? I was on The View like once, and then I was on The View 2 times, and I was on The View 3 times.
I didn't know that.
And I'm going to be honest with you. I kicked its ass. I mean, I crushed it. I mean, and And I was like, I should get this job. And they came to me and they said, we're going to redo The View. And you know, the plan is you're going to be they're also going to, I don't care who knows. Remember, what's his name? Is it Ross? Is his last name Matthews? High-pitched guy, gay. Was he on The Tonight Show for a while with Leno? Do you remember? Ross?
Yeah, Ross Matthews.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So two dudes, one gay, one straight. This was I don't know how far down the road this plan went, but I know that it was discussed with me at pretty high levels of the show, right? And then it didn't happen. And I know why it didn't happen. And there's a whole bunch of reasons that it didn't happen, right? That whole show got blown up and the people in charge were out and new people came in and so forth. But I was mad. And Patrick, I thought what you're doing now, I thought I did what I'm supposed to do. I kicked ass. You know, I won, but I didn't get to win. And that's not the only example in my life where I've had to learn that is not a one-to-one equation. You don't do the right thing. You don't do the best thing. You're not the best man for the job. And because it's a one-to-one equation, you get it. It's just not how life works. Life is not fair. Life sucks. And I don't think it sucks, but it's going to. I had this conversation with my son this weekend. Like, you are going to get shit laid at your doorstep. This is how it happens, man. And I don't know how it's going to happen. And it's not going to happen once. It's going to happen a lot of times. And you're not going to deserve it, by the way. You're not going to deserve it. But the issue is, you thinking the world should work that way is making you not move forward from the world working your way. So you're focused on last year and what should have happened for Florida State. And we can all say it shoulda, shoulda, shoulda. But you're always focused in the past and on past tense. And this is where I got on to you during the call, and I'm like, I'm worried this mindset's dug in America. I truly am. There's so many people who are like, the system's rigged against me, and this institution is ruined, and this institution is going to hold me back. And you know what? You're not wrong. You're not. But if you just freaking quit and focus on the past and kick your can, you are going to make it a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're 1-4, Patrick. You're 1-4. You're horrible. You're horrible.
Be nice.
Florida State is terrible.
I don't watch anymore.
Be nice.
I knew SMU was going to beat you. I knew. You're not even in the top 12 debate. And by the way, now the system says you don't have to be a top 4. You could be top 12 and get in. And you can't win more than one game.
Oh, no.
So you have self-fulfilled the prophecy because you're so focused on the past and this whole thing being rigged against you. And I am worried about America adopting that mindset. We got a lot of people who are happy to point out the way this system is rigged against you. We got a lot of people who can sit in that lane and stay right there and feed into your anger and your upsetness, and they are going to keep you 1-4. They're going to make you a loser because you need to be like Scott Mann. You think Scott Mann in Afghanistan, think it all went great for him? No. But you're going to choose. You're going to start firing your bullets and move forward. Or you're going to be like, I can't believe the Taliban didn't play by the rules and surrounded us. We were surrounded.
To be fair, it's not fair to have to follow Scott Mann with this argument. Okay, it's not right. 2, I mean, most things are pretty subjective. In football, though, I do think it should be pretty objective. Like, you go undefeated. You know, if it was 2003, for example, and we were the third team out,
and the View and the college football playoff have a different scale of subjectivity to objectivity. I'll give you that.
But it shouldn't be like the football playoff shouldn't be subjective at all. You know, it should be pretty straightforward. But you know, if we were left out at the 3rd seed, undefeated like Auburn was that one time, I get it. You know, like sometimes you're just the team that's out. But like to be left out of a 4-team playoff as one of 3 undefeated teams.
When you're undefeated, yes, when you're undefeated and a one-loss team went in over you, I get.
In a power 4
By the
conference.
way, on a side note, you know the thing about subjectivity? One thing I've noticed, I'm on like week 3 of these rankings. You know, I send them into Patrick and he sends them to Outkick. It is really enticing to be subjective. I've never done it before like this, and I've been the guy that's like, you reward the record, you know? And I really have. But when I've sat here and I've done it, I'm like, okay, where did I put Georgia? At 9, right? So Georgia's got 1 loss. So I was like, well, they've got to be punished. Plus, I don't think they've looked good against Kentucky, right? And so, but you start factoring in these things about how you've looked, and it gets subjective really quickly. Like, I watched Oregon, and I think Oregon looks better than Penn State, but on their record, like, can I really prove that? And it's easier to be subjective now. By the end of a season, when people have a whole body of work, I hope I'm less subjective. But I have noticed that I sit there and I ask myself the theoretical question, but Will, do you really think that Georgia would lose to Penn State? Do I really think that would happen? And I don't, but I put Georgia behind Penn State.
Would you have?
What's up, James? I saw you say, yeah.
All the accusations of being a homer and such. Was there any point in the Texas game, first official SEC game, that you said, oh, shoot, this might be kind of a wake-up welcome to the SEC call?
None. Zero.
Really?
None.
That's unbiased.
No self-reflection.
Obviously. Yeah.
I
No
totally
insecurity.
thought they were going to get some,
watched-
Texas isn't ready for it yet.
They don't have a quarterback. They
Oh,
lost the last
come
week.
on.
Who?
Come on.
There was no
Who?
shot in
Who?
heck that Mississippi State was doing anything.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Mississippi
I
State
never
lost their
felt
quarterback.
insecure. I'm with you,
Right.
Patrick.
Why would you? Yeah. No, they're terrible.
No, by the way, on this poll, 50% still have Texas at number one and 50% have Alabama at number one. You guys all called me a homer for having Texas at number one.
Probably coin flip.
My argument is Texas is smoking folks with their backup quarterback. They beat Mississippi State by 21, and they shot themselves in the foot like 5 times in the game. Mississippi State didn't do anything to Texas. Texas did a couple things to Texas. But no, I don't feel any more insecure about Texas. I want to give Alabama credit for a really good victory, but I don't think it's enough to put them over Texas right now. Texas will have plenty of opportunity to prove me right with Oklahoma and Georgia coming up in the next 2 weeks. So we're good. We're good to go. But so back to this America thing. Okay. Do you see my concern? Like, I think the Florida State fan is acting, if we're being honest, like a good section of the right in America. There's too much of the right that has said all of our institutions are rotten. There's no point, and they're basically bleeding us into there's no point in trying and signing us up for perpetual loserdom. I really feel that way. Now, maybe they could say, well, the plan is to tear down the system. Well, I mean, okay, the thing over which you have limited control. Like, that's the Florida State fan saying, I'm leaving the ACC. Or you just start winning, Patrick. You start going to practice and fixing your morale and executing your X's and O's and capitalizing on those 4 and 5 stars that you have, more than SMU, and winning. Otherwise, America is going to be Florida State. Like, we all need to start doing our stuff. It doesn't make the other side right or the institutions pure, but it keeps us from being damn losers like Florida State.
I got to say, I have the opposite of that problem with Notre Dame. I mean, we benefit from the system when we shouldn't all the time in college football. And I'll admit that this one time. This one time I'll admit that, but it is true.
So who would you be in this analogy?
I don't know. I was trying to think.
Are you like
Notre Dame's the kid with a rich dad.
Ukraine.
That's good.
I think James is closer to the right. He's the kid with the rich dad. Yeah. He's got the automatic bid into the fraternity. He's the legacy hire, legacy entrance into Harvard.
Yeah.
You know, that's Notre Dame.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'll be honest as well, Dan. As long as we're having this all honest moment, Texas isn't far from that either.
I know.
Okay.
That's true.
Like, Texas is going to get the benefit of the doubt.
You got your own network.
Understand
You
that.
got your own TV network down there. I see.
So this is a point where Patrick is supposed to embody the other side and go, oh, all the privileged people tell me to pick myself up by the bootstraps.
I did just want to say,
Patrick,
like,
a secret Democrat?
Yeah.
no one gave Texas and Oklahoma crap for leaving their conference and destroying it. I mean, like, we want to go make the money that we deserve to make. We should be able to.
I just think that
It has nothing to do with football. It's not connected.
James, you said, is Patrick a Democrat? Is that what you said?
A secret Democrat.
There is a place at which the right and the left start becoming very similar, right? I think Patrick is getting I think like a lot of the far right, like it's getting close. It's getting close around the top of that circle. I do think so.
Yeah, it's like a Venn diagram, as Kamala would say.
I am
I love Venn
extremist. I'm
diagrams.
at the top of the horseshoe every time.
Yeah.
I can go either way.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I used to play a game with people at work where I would be more liberal
Pull
and
that
more
clip.
conservative than them. Huh?
I can go either way.
I could.
All right. That's my college football talk about. Please do not become Florida State. I actually like you, Patrick, and I like Florida State, and I like Seminole fans, and I feel for a year ago. And I know that if this segment, if they hear it, they're going to hate me for it. But the truth is, if you're a real Florida State fan, you got to look up and go, last year's last year, and this year I'm 1-4. You're 1-4, and I don't want America to be 1-4 because of a loser mentality.
Most of them are drinking too many vodka sodas to really worry about it, to be honest.
Florida State, a vodka soda school. Interesting. All right. I appreciate the conversation. Always fun. Dan, good to have you back. Look good and tanned and married. All right, that's going to do it for today here on the Will Cain Show. I'll see you again same time, same place tomorrow.